How the empire packed light and left baggage. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a very British problem. How Great Britain quietly left behind some of the world's biggest challenges when granting independence to many countries. But before we get serious, a big announcement. We are gaining a steady following with more subscribers every day. For a brand new channel that speaks truth with a twist, that's pretty wild. So if you're watching and haven't subscribed yet, go on, make it official. Let's go steady, shall we? Now, let's get into today's story. Britain, home of polite tea, awkward goodbyes, and quietly walking away from global problems like a guest who forgot to flush. Sure, they taught the world how to brew tea, but they also stirred in a lot of trouble before they left. Big one. Problems that echo today. Partition. Drawing lines with a blunt crayon. It's 1947. India wants independence. Britain says, all right, but let's split it first. You know, for peace. So they call in a guy named Cyril Radcliffe, a barrister with zero experience in South Asia, its languages, cultures, or geography, and tell him to draw a border. Oh, did we mention that he'd never even been to India? He has 5 weeks. 5 weeks to divide a subcontinent of over 400 million people. What followed was the partition of India and Pakistan, and one of the largest and bloodiest migrations in human history. Over 14 million people were displaced. Up to 2 million died in communal violence. Trains arrived full of corpses. Villages were massacred. Families were torn apart. Some never reunited. But Britain, well, it held a ceremony, lowered the Union Jack, and sailed off like it had just returned a borrowed kettle. The trauma of partition still lingers today, in politics, in memory, and in the nuclear arms race between India and Pakistan. A neat little farewell gift, courtesy of the Crown. Palestine, promised to everyone, protected by no one. In 1917, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration, supporting a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, a land already inhabited by hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. At the same time, Britain had promised the Arab world independence in exchange for fighting the Ottomans. So yes, they promised the same land to two different peoples. Then they drew borders with France behind everyone's back, Sykes-Picot style, like slicing up a cake nobody asked them to bake. Under British rule, tensions exploded. Jewish immigration rose. Palestinian resistance was met with violent crackdowns. By the time Britain handed the mess to the UN in 1947, the damage was done. 750,000 Palestinians were expelled or fled in what they call the Nakba, or catastrophe. Entire villages were erased, families displaced. And Britain? It packed up and left, leaving behind a conflict still burning more than 75 years later. This wasn't just diplomatic clumsiness. It was a colonial power setting a fuse and walking away. To this day, Palestinians live under occupation, siege, and apartheid-like conditions, denied statehood, sovereignty, and safety. The Rohingya crisis, colonial favoritism with a long memory. Now we head to Burma, modern-day Myanmar. Back when Britain controlled it, they encouraged migration of laborers from what is now Bangladesh into Western Burma, particularly the region of Rakhine. The Rohingya, a Muslim minority, became a scapegoat, viewed by the majority Buddhists as outsiders, even though many had lived there for generations. When Burma gained independence in 1948, Britain left behind no legal protections for the Rohingya and no plan for coexistence. What followed was decades of marginalization, statelessness, and targeted violence. Fast forward to 2017. Myanmar's military launched a brutal campaign against the Rohingya. Villages were burned, women assaulted, thousands killed. Nearly 1 million fled to refugee camps in Bangladesh, where many remain today. The UN called it a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. And at the roots of it, a British colonial structure that sowed division, then vanished. Britain left them with no identity papers, no representation, and no voice. Final thoughts. 3 ghosts of empire. So what do these 3 crises have in common? Britain stepped in, rearranged the furniture, made a few promises, and then left before the lights even flickered. These aren't just historical footnotes. They are ongoing struggles shaped by borders drawn in haste and policies written with imperial pens. Britain may have given the world Shakespeare, the Beatles, and Marmite, but it also left behind conflict, displacement, and a whole lot of unresolved trauma. Until next time. If you've ever looked at a global crisis and thought, wait, how did this start? The answer is sometimes, well, a British man with a map. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, especially if your country is still cleaning up after a game of empire. Tea, anyone?